Lubing pistons. You have to bear with me. I've not been up long because I'm not very well at the minute. But anyway, my uni tube. This is a bespoke 22mm comp tube. It fits a Pro Sport and it can fit in a TX. So this is machined and then hardened and then honed to a specific size. This is a piston that can run in it, my full piston. Now you'll note there's no bearings on this piston. It doesn't need them. This is an aluminium hard anodized piston. It's around about 60 Rockwell hard. It uses the same sealer that you use on the skirtless pistons. Now this piston with no seal in that comp tube will compress air. It leaks a little bit, but it will compress air. It falls slowly. If you use grease around the outside of this piston, like most people will show you on DIY videos, they'll say you grease the outside of your piston and you put it into your comp tube and then off you go. No, it's not going to work. The main reason is because the grease has a thick viscosity and it will grab the walls of this piston and the inside walls of that comp tube and it will slow it down. Now, I've seen 100 feet per second lost, sometimes more, and very, very inconsistent shot cycle. Shot to shot, the velocity's all over the place. It's really important that this and this is lubed the correct way. Now, on my group, Lost Volume, on Facebook, I detail a mix that I make. And that mix comprises of STP oil additive for petrol engines. It's the blue bottle. And I mix that with a treadmill belt lubricant, which is a silicone oil. Its viscous rating is 50. And I mix it 50-50. Now, it has to be mixed right before use because the two liquids separate, and that is the key. The key is those two liquids do separate. Now, you can mix powder with that if you want to enhance it a little bit for excuse me, for steel on steel contact, etc. And you can put super fine grade tungsten disulfide, you can put super fine grade PTFE, you could use super fine moly, but moly has a question over it and I'll explain why after. You could use graphite or you could use graphene powder. You can mix whatever you like with it at the end of the day. And you mix it directly before use. Now I haven't got any in here, it's quite messy stuff, but at the end of the day, I have it in a JSB pellet tin. I don't do anything special. I just measure out the 50% of the liquid and then I add a little bit of powder with it and mix it, and I mix it right before use, and all I do is I put a drop about the size of a grain of rice just on the inside here, and then I smear it round with my finger. It's a tiny, tiny amount. And what that does is it allows this piston to go in and out of there as if there's nothing holding it. Now, there'll be skeptics about this, but this lube that I've shared with everybody is incredible. Because it separates, the STP sticks to the metallic parts and the silicone lube sticks to the only plastic part on here, which is that polyurethane seal on the front. And one rides on top of the other. And it just makes the thing incredible. There's nothing touches it. I've tried everything. I've spent hundreds, if not thousands of pounds on lubrication. And there's nothing touches it. Now, my skirtless pistons can have, these are iGlider bearings, which is a bearing grade plastic that doesn't expand. It has a super low coefficient of thermal expansion. The lubing regime is exactly the same as for the full piston. Now, if they've got bronze bearings, I was worried to begin with about putting a silicone oil in with bronze bearings, but I have shot thousands And customers in Europe have also shot thousands, and I'm talking thousands, sleeve after sleeve of pellets, and it doesn't do any harm. You only use a drop. It stays within the comp tube, and it basically turns a tight-fitting piston. A tight-fitting seal will feel like it's been sized in correctly. That's how good it is. Now, I also cut the tolerance on these bearings to practically the same tolerance as that piston in there. So if you use a thick grease along the body of the piston here, you will slow the piston down. The viscosity is too thick. So you want something thin. Now you could use SM50. You could use that, which is basically a silicon oil with moly powder in it as well. Now you could use that, but at the end of the day, the mix I make beats everything. So anyway, so at the end of the day, same rule applies on a sleeve, or if you just got a skirtless kit, you put a drop and then you can smear it around. You can actually smear it around. You could use the tip of a screwdriver to get a little bit and then gently just smear it around. And then all you do is you just push the piston and then you just pull it backwards and forwards a few times and then you're done. You don't pull it out, because when you pull it out again, all the lube smears up, and then when you push it back in again, you push all the lube right down to the bottom. So all you do is you just push it in, pull it backwards and forwards a bit, and that's it. Leave it. Don't pull it out. Just put it in your gun and shoot it. So now we'll talk about springs. So this is one of my kits. This is the spring setup out there, full piston. So it has a standard top out on the end, and it has a steel guide at the back. It's a 3-piece steel guide system. So it's important that this guide is not lubricated on the inside. And the reason for that is basically this won't fit, I don't think, because I sized these guys to the rod that they're going. Oh, it does. We're all right. Anyway, yeah, this is the correct one for it. If you lube inside there, the fit on this is so tight, there is no slop at all. It's perfect. If you again put grease on here, it will cause suction that the guide will actually grab the rod and it won't slide freely. So it's important that that guide on the inside and that rod remain dry. So it makes it a little bit more awkward for lubing. So I gently with a brush grease up the top hat and grease his face. Now there's a washer down inside here as well, a slip washer, hardened slip washer. You can grease the faces of that and then carefully drop it in, and then this top hat will slip on that slip washer inside and not chew up the inside of the piston. So that goes inside there like that, and then the guide goes inside there like that. Now, I use a paintbrush now, and I use a grease it's made by Lucas, it's called Red and Tacky, and I mix tungsten disulfide powder with it. Now, you could use moly grease because this is steel. You paint it just a little between the coils, all the way up and down on there, and then if you want, you can just wet the body of the spring. You're not putting anything on that you can really see. You just want to make it so the spring looks wet, and that's to stop it going rusty. And that is it. It's barely any grease at all. I've barely got any on my fingers here. You barely put any grease on there at all, keeping the inside dry. Now that's the same for my old Delrin rear guides as well. Those were cut to the same tolerance as basically what these steel guides are. So it's important that you leave the inside of the guide dry and the rod of the piston, skirtless or skirted, it doesn't matter, dry. Now, if you're running rear guides on your air rifle that have a larger tolerance to the inside, that the bore is bigger, let's say it's 10.6 millimeters, then you may get away with a larger guide with grease on it, because there's more room for the grease to move into. And at the end of the day, one will lubricate the other and then you'll be fine. But I don't. My kits have close tolerance parts. So it's important that the kit is lubed correctly. Now, at the end of the day, people are going to lube the guns how they like to lube their guns. But it's important that customers know, if a customer comes back to me and says, I've just serviced my rifle and it's lost 80 feet per second, I'm immediately going to ask them, have they lubed it correctly? And there is a right way of doing it to ensure that the piston flies at the right speed. If you don't lube it like I've just shown, there's a good chance you'll actually slow your gun down. When I test these rifles, I normally don't lube the rear guide at all and use the tiniest amount of lube on the piston seal. So I basically run the rifles dry, and that's to see their maximum speed. The little bit of lube that I put on can actually slow them 10 or 15 feet per second. So it's important, and I can't stress this enough, it's important that you lube it right. Get that bit right, and you're done. Now, like I said, I use a grease made by Lucas. It's called Red and Tacky. I buy it in the cartridge system. You can buy it in tubs. It's a sticky lithium red in colour grease that doesn't have any powder additives, as in moly or tungsten, or it doesn't have anything in it. You can use that as is. It's a very, very, very good grease. And the reason why I buy Red and Tacky is because it sticks. But if you put too much, it really slows your spring down. So you have to just paint it on with, I use a little 10mm brush, a 15mm brush actually. So I paint between the coils. I just paint between the coils and then turn it round and paint a bit more, and then turn it round and paint a bit more, just so it discolours, and that's it. Now, like I said, I had tungsten disulfide powder. I bought that from Canada. It cost a minor fortune because I got the smallest grade I could find. It's actually dangerous. It can enter the pores in your skin. So it's up to you. If you want to add powders, you can add powder. Now, the mixed lube for the piston seals, if you mix 50% STP and 50% of the silicone oil together, that works just fine also. It doesn't need any powder if you don't really want to put any in. But the important thing is mix it right before use. Make sure it's all mixed together, because it does separate. And then you only use a drop. It's literally a drop. You don't plaster this stuff on, it's a drop. The STP bonds itself, sticks to the metal components. Very, 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 very thin. This is why you only use a drop. And then obviously the silicone oil lubricates the piston seal and the bearings, if they're plastic bearings. So there you go. That's how I lube my guns.